Oh, hello YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian, we are going over my August wrap-up. Now, I don't want to overhype this, but I did pretty okay reading-wise in August because I was so slumpy in early summer, but I feel like late summer might be like picking up some steam. Fingers crossed. At least I was reading things I was enjoying for the most part, so I think that might be a contributing factor. Without any further ado, let's get into actually what I read in August. First category is books I've already reviewed, and there's 2 of them. I recently posted my recap video for From Russia with Love by Ian Fleming. This is an odd one for me because I don't love it, if I'm being honest. Like, the movie is great, and I think it's a really good adaptation, but the book is the book. It's just, like, I can appreciate from a literary standpoint what Ian Fleming is doing. However, it doesn't necessarily make it the most fun to read, and also, oh my god, is it racist? Holy moly! It was doing better for the past couple books, especially with, like, racism and sexism and stuff. It was getting a little bit better and then just backslid down, and it just, I don't think it ever gets better again. So here we are. But yeah, From Russia with Love, it's interesting, but not my favorite of the series, but I have a whole recap video all about it. I also recapped Prince Lestat by Anne Rice. I can't believe I'm getting towards the end of the Vampire Chronicles. I'm definitely going to read some more Anne Rice after it's all done, so stay tuned for more info on that. But in the meantime, Prince Lestat. This was an interesting part of the series because about a decade had gone by in between the last book and the release of this one. And it's very different in tone overall. It has a bit more hope in it, I would say. A lot of the other books in the series end on these really bittersweet, melancholy notes, and this one is kind of ending like, hey, we're all a family. So very different ending, but like, I'm a sucker for a happy ending, so I don't mind that. And it's like, they brought science to vampires, I'll say that, in strange and unusual ways. So science, technology, this is the modern age with these vampires in it, so it's a different vibe. But yeah, it's wild as usual. Like, this is not a surprise. The books get weirder and weirder as they go on. But from a narrative standpoint, this one fairly straightforward. I enjoyed it, but yeah, they did mad scientist shit. Next category is book club books, and I read 2 of them. For my patron and channel member book club, we read A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn for August book club pick, and this was highly recommended to me. I've had this on my shelf for several years. It was time to finally read it. And I just want to say, going into this, it's not the book's fault, it's my fault. Like, it's just not the I'm not the perfect reader for this book. I don't have any beef with it. I think it has great pacing. It flows really well. The mystery is well crafted. There's nothing wrong with the book. It's just my own enjoyment level I found to be a little bit lacking, and it's just me because I like things spicy, and this one wasn't really spicy. And I don't mean necessarily like smutty spicy. I just mean like spicy, like action-packed and characters and like zaniness, and it was definitely zany and stuff, but it just, I don't know, it had that vibe that I just wasn't like going for. It felt almost too cozy, if that makes sense. I'm in that weird place where I'm trying to rate it both critically and also taking my own bias out of this, so I just landed at like a 3.5. But kind of closer to rounding down to 3 than rounding up to 4, if I'm being honest. But overall, I think it's kind of fun. I think if you have also read the book Soulless by Gail Carriger, you are going to love this. I feel like there's a lot of similarities there. And if you love this one, check out Soulless by Gail Carriger, because it's like this, but paranormal, like with werewolves and stuff. So very similar books, and I had the same reaction to reading that book, so I think it's just a me thing. For the vintage lesbian read-along, I read Loving Her by Anne Allen Shockley. Now, this was the first real interracial lesbian romance published, and I appreciate it for its point in history and just how the world was so different in the 70s and how people related to each other. So for historical standpoint, I thought that's interesting. I like respect where respect is due. Do I personally like the book? No, I do not. There's a lot of problems with it that, I don't know. I think it's overly purple prose. There's just so much trying to be poetic about everything. Even like the smutty bits are trying to be very purple prose about them. And when it's not being purple prose, it's kind of being didactic, where I feel like it's constantly trying to like teach me about a socio-political, socio-economic situation. And I get it, that's important, and it's part of like the tapestry that this book is set in. But when you stop the whole motion of the story to have this character think for 2 pages about the sociological aspects of this conversation, it kind of takes you out of it, and it just starts becoming, is this a term paper? You know what I mean? So for me, I don't know if the writing necessarily worked, but I appreciate it for what it is. It was the first international lesbian romance, and it's smutty too, and it has a happy ending, because we're only reading romances which have happy endings. So spoiler alert, not so much really, but it is what it is. I think I ended up giving it like 3 stars because it's fine, I guess, but not for me. Next category is YA fantasy, and I read 3 of them. So last month I started reading this manga series. So I have Villians Are Destined to Die, volumes 3 and 4. I'm kind of addicted to it now, and I'm just buying them all. 4 just came out in August, so this is brand spanking new. Like, the basic gist here is that there's this girl, and she's playing, like, you know, those cheesy, like, romance video games where you play on easy mode, all the people fall in love with you, blah, 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 the end. Or you can play in hard mode where you play the villain. And somehow this girl gets sucked into the game for real, and she has to play it in hard mode as the villain. And the problem with playing the villain is that she gets killed off all the time in the game. So she's like, oh shit, how do I not die? So it's kind of funny in its own sarcasm and how this character acts around other people. And I mean, if you were looking for kind of a devious villain kind of character who has like those definite qualities where I'm like, oh, like, you could be scary if you want. Like, this is kind of the book for you. She's not necessarily a, quote, villain, but the way she thinks and navigates the world is a little Machiavellian, and I'm into it. So, yes, I've just been enjoying this series intensely. I have books 5 and 6 already pre-ordered. I'm addicted to it. I also read Painted Devils by Margaret Owen. This is the follow-up to Little Thieves. I absolutely loved Little Thieves. It was so good. Chef's kiss of a book. I had to have this. As soon as it was available for pre-order, I pre-ordered the shit out of it. Painted Devils is a direct continuation off of Little Thieves. It takes place a few months after the action and events of that book. And we're still with Vanya, our con woman extraordinaire. She's also the adopted daughter of the gods of fate and death. So, you know, she has her own thing going on. And this one is obviously, you know, a middle book of a trilogy because it has a big cliffhangery ending. They're kind of like throwing in little threads of things that could be important that are like setting it up for the finale. So there is a lot of like middle book going on in here. However, it's definitely its own story. And it's dealing a lot with Vanya's past. And that's all I'll say about the plot, because I don't want to like spoil things. But essentially, we're just following Vanya and her love interest, Emmerich, and they're both kind of adorable because they're just such obvious like 18-year-old virgins. They both are kind of cast as like demisexual characters, and they're both kind of now starting to experience like sexual thoughts and feelings for each other. So that's also a big part of the book where they're exploring that for the first time. So I think for like, you know, a teen audience reading a book with like very clear consent and boundaries and 2 people respecting each other is a good thing. So I think the sexuality in the book is handled very well. Nothing's too graphic. And I don't want to get into too many spoilers here, but it's just really, really fun. The writing is so intensely good. Like, I tabbed the heck out of this book because I only tab things when I find a line that's particularly funny or clever or ooh, that is like a solid line, and I tabbed this at least 20 times. So the writing is amazing, the story's amazing. I can't wait for the next book in this trilogy. I want it so bad and I have had no news about it. It's driving me a little insane. But besides all that, I can't recommend this series more. It is so good. Just check it out. Last category is horror, and I read 2 of them. I read Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And this was one of my highly anticipated books for the whole year. I think in the end, it kind of under-delivered for like a lot of reasons, and I'll explain. Basic gist here is that there's this cursed film with like Nazi occultism. The director of it was like involved with like witchcraft and stuff. And somehow there's this curse laid into the film, and if they complete the movie, then like things happen. Basic gist. And it's also in the 90s in Mexico City. And I really enjoyed the magical elements of this, the occult elements, like the whole like magical cult aspect here. I think the horror elements, excellent. The main problem here is that it takes forever to get to the cool horror shit. There's like demons and magic and evil ghosts and like gory stuff, and like it's really cool, and that's all the stuff I expect out of Silvia Moreno Garcia books. It's just so much of the book is about like our 2 main characters and how they kind of have like a will they won't they situation going on ever since childhood, and it's like so much of the book is based on that, and also, you know, like their struggles with their careers and their personal lives. And I get it, that's important for who these characters are, and it lends a backdrop to the story. But like, I'm here for the spooky shit, and like it's all crammed at the end of the book, and I feel like they could have interspersed more magic and occultism and cool stuff, horror elements, for more of the book, and I would have gotten into it more. So, I mean, A+ for the horror we did get, and like kind of like B- for how long it took to get to it. So it's in that weird phase. I gave it like a 4 in the end because I did enjoy it, but like, I don't know, I think it could have been structured better. Last up in this wrap up, I read Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. Now, we all know Chuck Tingle and his whole Tingle verse, but this is his first like adult horror debut where it's not, you know, no one's getting pounded by anything in this one. This one is a horror set amongst gay conversion therapy and like religious trauma. So if you're like ex-evangelical, I feel like this is going to resonate a lot for you, but also it might resonate in a very bad way. So check trigger warnings here because I feel like it would be a lot for certain people. But yeah, it's just basically a lot of religious trauma and also demonic camp counselors, kind of, if I'm getting into it. I don't want to give away too many spoilers here. And my main issue with the book in general, I think, is that I fully predicted all of the mechanics of the story really early on. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, because I'm trying to take my own bias out of it, because like I read a gajillion books. I study story structure. I can kind of tell where things are going, but for the average reader, they might not. So I'm trying to look at it objectively, and I do think it's well crafted. It's just for me, like I understood the mechanics of what was going on very early. And I'll say that while I understood the mechanics of what I was getting, I didn't know the actual like nitty-gritty details. So all of those elements were kind of cool with the demonic horror aspects of this. Like I will say, trigger warning for body horror, because shit gets gross at times. I'll just say that. But it's really good overall. It kind of has a happy ending. Of course, it's Chuck Tingle. He writes happy endings. So I don't know. Like it's hard to rate because like I guessed everything, so it was a little predictable, and also so much religious trauma that it was like difficult to get through at times. But yeah, it's fine overall. I don't think it's bad. It's kind of average. I would say 3.75 stars in the end. All right, well, that'll do it. That's all I read in August. I think I read quite a fair amount of stuff, surprisingly. I was really proud of myself. I already feel like September, I might go off the rails. Mainly just because when I'm filming this, I still haven't read anything in September yet, and that's a problem, but I'm working on it. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below, what's a book that you found really predictable and why? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. Goodbye.